Welcome to the Friday edition of Juan's World, and welcome to 2025. On Tuesday, I was talking to you in 2024, and it was getting off on New Year's Eve, and I showed you some old photos of my cooking. Well, I did pretty much the same. I made some soba noodles, I made some pot liquor soup, I made some hush puppies. I also I made some sashimi and sushi and what have you. I did, a lot of cooking. I'm not gonna do it again for you. I'm going to talk about hopes for the future. I think I mentioned on Tuesday that I don't make New Year's resolutions. I don't. But I do have hopes for the future, and that's what I want to talk about. So let's get into it. One of the things that I have been pursuing like doggedly since COVID has been my publishing, and it's going very well right now. As I mentioned last time, I published 4 books in 2024. I've got 2 contracts I'm working on right now, and I've got 2 proposals that are out and are looking promising. I've also got a manuscript with a publisher right now that's got to go through its routine review and come back to me, and then I'll have to revise it and whatnot and so on. So there's a lot going on. And I just want to talk a little bit about what publishing means to me, and also what blogs and YouTube videos mean to me. And the 2 things that they do not mean to me are money, because I don't make any money on my YouTube channel. These videos go out for free. They're not monetized. They're not loaded with advertising. I don't have a sponsor. I don't start each video by saying, before we get into the meat of things, I want to tell you about blah blah blah, like this company or this insurance or what. I'm not going to do that, because I'm not interested in making money, and I'm not interested in charging you anything directly or indirectly. These are just me, putting out my ideas. I'm also not interested in ambition. I'm retired. If I want to teach in a university, pretty much anywhere in the world, all I got to do is show up at the door and say, here I am. Do you want lectures on X, Y, or Z? And they'll say yes. It took a little while in Cambodia. I had to be a little bit persistent, and that's very strange, because Cambodia really needs education at all levels, because the devastation of Pol Pot and his genocide, then the Civil War, the war with Vietnam and so forth, they all took a huge toll on education. Pol Pot just basically killed anybody who had an education. He killed all the teachers, and they've never recovered. We're talking about a long time now. I'm talking about over 30 years since all of that ended, and they just haven't been able to spring back. And I guess I could consider myself fortunate in that they don't have any anthropology programs anywhere, because they don't have any anthropology professors. There are a few that wander around, but There are none that are consistent. So I teach here, or did. I don't teach much anymore, but I taught both undergraduate and anthropology, introduction to anthropology, and I've also taught research methods, and I've taken a few PhD candidates under my wing to help them with their methodology. I mean, in sociology, because that is a semi-viable program. They don't have any people at the Royal University with PhDs in sociology, and so it's a little bit incestuous. You know, they like the best of their undergraduates may turn around and teach sociology to new undergraduates, but they don't do any research, and so they're not really up to snuff. The few people who do have PhDs here in the social sciences got them elsewhere. The dean of the Royal University got his PhD, I think it was in psychology, in Amsterdam, and there are others who go to universities in Australia or Singapore, maybe Japan, but they can't get PhDs in those programs here. There are a few doctoral programs in the STEM subjects starting up, but they're also pretty new. So, you know, what I consider is that this is my legacy, if you like, and it goes back to something I remember. Like back in my 20s, when I was a graduate student, I remember having a conversation with a new friend. I was down in DC visiting an old university friend of mine who was a teacher at that time in England, and he had an exchange program with a high school in DC, and he was over for a month or something like that. So I went down. I was living in New York. I went down, and the couple that he was staying with were an interesting couple. The husband worked at the school where the exchange was going on, and I've forgotten what his wife did, but anyway, we went to some theme park, which I wasn't interested in at all. So I was just sort of sitting, you know, waiting for people to get off roller coasters and stuff. And the wife wasn't really interested either, so we would just sit around and talk. And I don't know how it got to it, but I remember saying to her that at that time, what I really wanted to do was to publish a book, because I hadn't published anything at that point. I'd published a few papers as a graduate student, but I'd certainly not published a book or even written one. I'd written a master's thesis, but I hadn't written my doctoral dissertation. So, but I was thinking, like, if I get a book published, it will be in libraries in different parts of the United States and maybe even the world, and so I will be there as an entity even after I die. And that also reminds me of something that I read a long time ago about how long does your memory last? Well, after you die, it kind of depends. I mean, if you maybe you're in some photographs that people treasure, and so they look back on you as grandpa, great-grandpa, great-great-grandpa, and they look at them and say, oh yeah, he's still in my memory. But how is he in your memory? I mean, like, what do you remember about him? Like, I don't know anything about my father's parents because I never met them. I know a little bit about my mother's parents because I did meet them very occasionally when I lived in England as a little boy, between 2 and 6 years old. But my memory is very dim. And then we went to Australia, and my grandfather died whilst we were there. And then when we returned, my grandmother had a major stroke right around the time when we returned, and so she was just pretty much out of it. And then she died pretty soon after that also. So, like, my memories of people like that are pretty slim. My memories of my parents, of course, are more solid. But the thing is that once I die, and my sisters die, let's say, then my parents and my grandparents are pretty much gone. Because there's no one to remember them intimately anymore. Like my son never met my father. He was dead before my son was ever born. And he doesn't really remember my mother because she died whilst he was a small boy. He doesn't have much in the way of memories going back to that time. So I was thinking, like, if I write a book, then even when I die and the people that I know die, there'll still be that memory knocking around in libraries, and so I'll still have a little bit of an avenue into the living world. And, well, as it happens, I did eventually publish a book. It was of all things, my master's thesis got published. I think it was around 1982, something like that. And then my doctoral dissertation got published, and then a lot of my research got published. And so now I have published 16 books. So, like, that side of things is well taken care of. But I also just think that there's more to it than that. And I think that, like, videos, YouTube videos, are a memory that's also in the works, and it's really quite personal. I mean, you can see what I look like, what I sound like. You get some sense of my personality. I mean, not a big sense, but that I'm, living, breathing human being, and that when I die, these YouTube videos will survive. I don't know how long for. I don't know, whether they get taken down after a while. It's kind of curious. Like, Facebook doesn't take profiles down when people die. I don't know how long they stay up, but they do stay up for quite some time. So periodically, on a certain day, I'll get a notification saying it's such and so's birthday, and it's interesting because that person died 4 years ago. But what happens is that a lot of that person's Facebook friends will put up messages saying happy birthday and so on, and so they'll kind of all connect together. I think I've got maybe 8 or 9 friends on Facebook at this point who've all died and who are still up there. I think there comes a point where the profile gets taken down, but I don't know the mechanics of it. So I guess that will also be the case, that I'll be sort of hanging around on Facebook for a while. But that's not quite the same as having a video like this, where you can, like, check in, say, well, yeah, that's the guy I remember. And that's the kind of thing that if you've made movies, or television shows, then you also are still with us. I can think about a ton of actors who are long dead, but they're still on the screen. Think about, like, Richard Burton, Elizabeth Taylor, Greta Garbo, who always wanted to be left alone. there's a ton of them that I'm happy I can still connect with in a certain kind of way because I've got their productions available to me. Their voice, their personality, their general demeanor. I get, like, well, I wouldn't say general demeanor with actors because they're playing a part. And we all know that people who seem to be really, nice and attractive on the screen are really awful people. There are a couple of examples that came up in the past year or so. I'm not going to get into trouble by naming names, but there was a particular guy and a particular woman who had talk shows that were ultimately cancelled because it was discovered that they were really awful people when they were off the air. And, like, that just somehow didn't sit well. I have this strange relationship with screen actors. Like, there are some of them who I consider to be such awful people that I won't watch any of their movies. I mean, they're alive right now. There's one guy who's a Scientologist. I just won't watch his movies. I used to, back in the days before I realized who he was, but now I won't watch them. There's a pretty well-known director and actor who stars in a lot of comic movies that I won't watch either because I don't like, what he's doing off the screen. But others, I sort of like don't know about. But my general impression is that the vast majority of screen personalities are not people that I would want to have anything to do with, because in order to become famous in that way, you have to do certain things that I just find distasteful. And that takes me back to ambition. I don't want to be ambitious. I mean, I'm glad that I have the success that I do have academically and in publishing and so forth. But it's not something that I yearn for. If I don't want my name to be a household name. I'm happy to have the friends that I have, and that's it. So that's how I feel about 2025. I want to just keep doing the same stuff. I'd like to travel a little more. I mentioned that last time. I'd like to travel internationally. Whether I do or not is going to depend on different circumstances, including my finances, and also just I'm developing a kind of indifference to going new places, mainly because it's just a hassle. I sort of like I'm getting to be pretty much of a homebody. Like, I like being at home. I don't mind going for walks, riding my bicycle, maybe even now and again taking the bus to the provinces. But most of the time, I just like hanging around in my apartment. My lease is up this month, and I could move to a new place. But I look around and I think, I'm going to pack up everything. I've got to find a way to transport, my oven and all of my dishes and pots and pans, and maybe I'll just stay here. But it's not the most convenient location for me. Before, I used to live close to the Royal Palace, and I could walk to a whole bunch of places within no more than 20 minutes. There were supermarkets I could go to, meat markets, fruit stalls of various sorts, restaurants, malls, pagodas, everything was just within easy distance. Um, but I moved because I was starting to teach at a university that was too far away for me to ride my bicycle every week. It's like 2.5 hours, I think, by bicycle, and that was just too much. So I moved to the location where I am now, in what's called the Khan, that's the district of Sunsok, which is very near the airport, but it's a long way west of the center of the city. So if I want to go to those places that I used to walk to, then I have to get on my bike, and it's it's a good half hour, 40 minutes by bike there and back. And I don't know. I can, at the end of this month, I can just, pack up my things and move to a new location. But I'd have to start thinking about that now. I have to start looking around now and deciding. And there's a danger. Like here, I know all the negatives. Like the airport is really noisy at certain times, and I don't like it. And I don't like having to travel as far as I have to. But there's a security guard here and a locked gate at night, so I can keep my bicycles outside, and they're safe. And I I also don't have cats coming to visit me. They used to prowl around my front balcony and my back door if they could smell me cooking, because there were always windows open, so they could smell the fish or meat or whatever, and they'd all come crowding around. And sometimes they'd get in my house. If I left the door open, they just walk in, and there are no cats in my building here. There are in the parking lot area, quite a few, and I guess they're all well fed and happy as far as I can tell, and a little bit shy of people. If you go up to them and you say, pussy, 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 they kind of look at you like, yeah, I don't like you. Go away. So, don't know. I think if I found a different location, maybe closer to the center, it might be noisier, or I might have bad neighbors, or who knows what. Like here, I don't have neighbors that I can hear at all most of the time. Like once in a very great while, I'll hear people in the corridor. Otherwise, not at all. And I've got neighbors across the street from me that occasionally have parties and they make noise, and that can, disturb my rest if I want to go to bed early. Because normally I go to bed somewhere between 7 and 8 o'clock at night, and then I get up around 1 o'clock in the morning, and at 7 o'clock, if they're having a party, then sometimes they got music on or they're talking loud, and it can be a nuisance. But I can sleep on my couch with the door to the bedroom closed, and I can't really hear it, so it's not too bad. And the airplanes, mostly the ones taking off, when the wind is in a certain direction, the planes come low over the nearby houses and land, and they're throttling back, so that's pretty quiet. But when they're taking off, when the wind's in the opposite direction, then they're firing up the engines and they're really noisy. And when I'm doing videos like this and one of them comes over, I have to stop, and you'll sometimes see me edit out a certain portion of my talking because they've just drowned out what I'm saying. So it's inconvenient, but I can live with it. My building manager is very accommodating. If anything goes wrong, if a light bulb goes out, or If something, the sink's blocked or something like that, I just have to send her a message and immediately somebody comes around and fixes it. Well, could do worse. And I think that's my message for 2025, is that even if you think that your life is not perfect, it could be worse. Like, maybe you ought to be satisfied with your life as it is right now, and not hope for anything better, because a change might be worse. So there it is. If you like my videos, please tell your friends, please like, please subscribe, and I will be back on Tuesday, and I'm not sure what I'm going to be doing, maybe some more cooking, because that will be the day after Epiphany. Epiphany is on Monday, and that will be the end of my Christmas cooking, and I'll be putting all my Christmas things away. And then the Monday after that is Plough Monday, which I do some cooking for, so I may get round to that, but that's a week later. And I'm thinking also that when we get to episode 400, which is coming up, I might stop. I might do something else. I might change the way the channel works. I don't know. It's all a new year, new beginnings, new understandings. So be well, have a good weekend, and I'll see you on Tuesday.